Gun in Pocket and Bible in Hand. It's a book I read as a young seminary student. The book chronicles the early days of the Pentecostal movement and how that Pentecostals were seen as a threat by mainstream churches. And many times the pastors and the pastors' wives and family were attacked by other Christians and were tarred and feathered, some beaten to death, some hung, their churches burned. And there became a practice of the early Pentecostal movement to preach with a gun on your hip. As many of you may know, or if not, please check it out. It's happening today. There was yet another mass shooting at a church where a gunman just walks in and opens fire. Churches like this are often chosen by the perpetrators of this violence because they feel very certain that the people inside are peace-loving, helpless, and most often unarmed. How uncouth is it for someone to carry a gun to church? I will tell you this, that as a young minister, there was a tragic shooting at a church that I can't recall the name of in Fort Worth. You may remember the story, where a youth night, Wednesday night service was attacked by a crazy person and multiple people were killed. And none of them were armed. A lot of them were young teenagers. At that exact time, I was a youth pastor. And I made the decision on my own to start carrying, because I had a concealed handgun license, start carrying my gun in church, which at the time was semi-legal, kind of uncharted territory, really. This shooting really, back then really shook me up, and I decided not on my watch. They were going to kill my kids, my youth group. So I began carrying a gun, and one day the bishop hugged me, and he felt my pistol, and he called me into his office, and I thought I was going to get fired. And he says, Pastor, I've been thinking about this a lot. I know what I felt when I hugged you, and I know that you carry a gun. And I want you to know it's okay, and I'm glad you carry a gun. And he opened up his jacket, and hidden in the small of his back, he also had a pistol. And we had a discussion, and right then and there, we formed a security group within the church. Men with military backgrounds, men with police background, and we made sure that anytime our doors were open for business, for church business, that somebody there was armed. And on service days, there were multiple men armed and strategically placed. The hardest part about that gig was getting them to move where they normally sit, so they could sit in a strategic position. To attack church people is the lowest of low. People that are there practicing their faith, worshiping their God. These people that are being targeted in these churches oftentimes are the best of the best. The people that help people, the people that feed the hungry, the people that clothe the naked, the people that visit people in prison. The best of our community is being targeted with these attacks. So, the fact that we had an armed contingency in our church was a well-kept secret. We just preferred that nobody knew. That's why if you hugged me, you always got the side hug, because I didn't want you feeling the pistol on my right hip under my jacket. We never got attacked, not while I worked there. It never happened. But it's happening more and more, and whether this is part of the left-wing conspiracy or just another nut, if you're a church-going Christian, pull your pastor aside, pull him into the office, bend his ear, tell him Christians have a right to defend themselves, and coming to church unarmed is not something any of us can afford anymore. I worry about my mom's own safety, but I know that her church is close enough to where I'm at. I would have heard the sirens if anything happened. And now, church is over here. But I'm glad that her pastor is a former police officer, and that when I told him about the plot against our country, he took me into his office and he opened up his jacket and he showed me the gun that he carries. So, whether it's legal or not to arm yourself in a church, I don't think it's smart not to any longer. That we have to have an armed response for these attacks against our innocents. You know, in the Sutherland Springs shooting today, children were killed. Children were shot. Children were targeted. It's the worst of the worst attacking the best of the best, and we can no longer put up with it. Lobby your church to have armed, responsive team on the ground in your church to counter any one of these threats that might come through. We can't be sitting ducks anymore.